Hey, Armand here with a short but heartfelt look at Saturn's time in Aquarius. Saturn gets into Aquarius on March 21st, depends upon how you look at it, March 21st, 2020, and he leaves in March of 2023. Quick little timeline thing here is to get that out of the way at first. He's going to retrograde back into Capricorn from July 1st to December 17th. 13th, something like that, of 2020. Big picture here. We have to deal with the details. Deal with that as we go along. It's going to retrograde back in Capricorn for that period of time. No sooner does he get back into Aquarius, again, he's going to meet up with Jupiter, and they're going to have one of what we call the grand conjunctions in Aquarius, right at 0 degrees Aquarius. Very big deal. You know, just barely gets into the sign. Jupiter catches up with him, and they meet there. For most of 2021, we have Saturn and Uranus. The two rulers of Aquarius are going to be square to each other. And that's really, for everything that I'm going to talk about, that's really the pivot point. That's really the time frame where the different forces of Aquarius are going to be sort of adjusting each other there. So Saturn represents the more structured, more fixed side of Aquarius. Uranus represents the more progressive side of Aquarius. Important to recognize, though, that there's a lot of similarities between these planets, as different as they are. Included in that is the fact that both of them can be a little unsentimental, and the Aquarian energy itself can be a little unsentimental, right? So this is very much a matter of principles, very much a matter of big picture stuff. That's where we're kind of seeing the sort of tension between Uranus and Saturn fighting it out in 2021. When Saturn leaves Aquarius in 2023, he leaves on about March 6th of 2023, and what do you know? Aquarius won't be lonely for long, because only about 2 weeks later, Pluto moves into the sign. Right? So we have, this is the Aquarian energy is going to be hot for a long time, or cool for a long time. All right, let's think about Saturn and Aquarius in outline. In outline, Saturn and Aquarius has a lot to do with ideals, societal ideals. What do we want society to look like? What would we like it to become? What are our ideals? And what are we willing to do to work to make them happen? Where are we willing to put in the effort? Where are we willing to do the work to make these ideals into realities? Aquarius, often known as a progressive sign, often known as a very humanitarian sign. Saturn there says yes, but where is the work being done? Saturn in Aquarius will help us to think about our ideals. It will also do a certain amount of paring back of our ideals. Motorbike outside. It'll also help to pare back our ideals a little bit. So those are the sort of two sides of things. What are we willing to work on, and what are we not willing to work on? What do we have to kind of let go of? So I think that when Jupiter and Saturn conjunct in Aquarius, Jupiter says, high ideals, let's do great things for humanity. Saturn says, okay, how are we going to do this, and what's it going to cost? And so that kind of sets the dominant theme starting starting at the end of 2020 into 2021. And then Uranus and Saturn tangle it out. And there we have a question about what is really going to be the dominant theme there. Who's going to sort of hold forth with it? Is Uranus, as ruler of Aquarius, as modern ruler of Aquarius, going to sort of give Saturn a push, or is Saturn, as the ancient ruler of Aquarius, going to hem in some of those Uranian ideals and ideas? In both cases, though, there can be a little bit of coolness and coldness. Sometimes the dark side of Aquarius is it's the person that loves humanity but hates people. It's the kind of, this is what's good for all of us, but is it really good for the individual? Or how many individuals is it good for? It's sort of a utilitarian kind of energy sometimes. Unbalanced, it would be kind of a utilitarian sort of energy. Certainly Saturn in Aquarius can be that way. Let's look at some specifics and see what's going on. One thing that is really worth looking at is the internet. And the internet, as you and I use it, you're trying to find the birth of the internet. You know, you can go back as far as you like, but the internet that you and I know was really born the last time that Saturn was in Aquarius. To a large extent, we could look at this as being the Saturn return of the internet. And as such, there is a kind of falling in and becoming serious about it. There is this kind of a sense of, well, what is this thing and what are its limitations? That's a Saturn return right there. So really, if you look, it was between 1991 and 1994 that most of the real pillars of the internet were put into place. Things like World Wide Web and the term blog and so on. That was during that period. It was when Uranus and then later Neptune went through Aquarius that the internet exploded. And those two very rule-averse planets really opened things up a great deal. And when Saturn comes into a sign, what we tend to see is we get legalization of things. We have legal limits on things. What you'll see is the revolutionary character of the internet that was so strong during the 90s and 2000s. There are limitations put in place. Now, that could go a lot of different ways. It could be, in fact, that we have laws that guarantee net neutrality in some places. On the other hand, there could also be restrictions on what we can see on the internet. That's another possibility. It's really kind of open. But what you'll see is a lot of laws pertaining to the internet. And again, if you want to look for all of this, the peak struggle time is liable to be 2021. It would be inappropriate not to mention that the dominant theme at the time of Saturn's ingress into Aquarius is nothing other than an airborne illness. And there's a lot of speculation about this. It looks very much like Ceres going through Aquarius sort of opened up the whole coronavirus pandemic, that Saturn going into it is going to, in a sense, make an acute problem chronic so that we deal with it. And, it will eventually become something that is normal or normalized or that we have to deal with. It is probable, though, that we will be getting little reminders about things, airborne illnesses, throughout Saturn's time in Aquarius. As an interesting Saturn and Aquarius thing that goes with this, which is, of course, that we have now a tendency towards an authoritarian approach. How are we going to limit our behavior for the sake of public health? Now, I'm not saying that it is the wrong thing to do. It's probably the right thing to do. But what it has done is given a wedge to those who would have us somewhat restricted all the time. It has given them a wedge and a model showing how this can happen. And in a very real sense, it is happening as we move into Saturn and Aquarius. So what happens is that we start to see that we become used to, and again, there's nothing inappropriate about this in terms of health, but we become used to restrictions being imposed on our movement. That's a very Saturn and Aquarius. Limitations, social distancing, right? This kind of, we have limits on how we can get together, how we can congregate. Sort of a trial run for a very, if you wanted to take a very dark view of it, and I don't, but if you want to take a dark view of it, it would be seen as sort of a trial run for a very totalitarian approach. We have a bit of an issue already with people spending so much time on the internet, not getting out, playing video games all the time, working from home, this lack of connection, or the connection that only happens through the internet. And what we have is a bit of an exacerbation of that. Uranus in Taurus is, I've already talked about Uranus in Taurus, and it's a variation on the same theme. Do you isolate yourself and live online, or do you sort of go back and be grassroots, make a garden, talk to your neighbors, connect with people in the neighborhood? Saturn in Aquarius is certainly pushing us in one direction. Like, no, go live online. You know, my nephews are a little bit suspicious of the fact that they're being told to stay in their rooms and play video games. Yes. Really? So we have some of that going on. I think that those give you an idea about the themes that will come up. Undoubtedly, in general, progressive social programs are going to be put forth. They're going to be struggled with, 2021, and they're going to be implemented. That's a Saturn and Aquarius type of thing. How far they go is an open question. Of course, a lot of this stuff is really up to us. If this is Saturn will tell us the themes, we have to kind of work with it. Okay, so those are the basic themes and some of the basic ideas of what's going to be happening over the course of the next few years. And, you know, Saturn is not the only planet in the sky, but he's certainly getting our attention right now. So let's look at what happens for each sign. Now, when I say for each sign, as you know, it could be the sun sign or it could be the rising sign. In this particular case, for most folks, I would say that the emphasis should go towards the rising sign. That's kind of my take on it. But it will work to a certain extent for sun signs as well. We'll start with Aquarius, since Aquarius is getting the brunt of it over here with Saturn and then later Jupiter coming in. And Aquarians are kind of dealing with this question, you know, who's our ruler? Is it Saturn? Is it Uranus? Are we going to be sort of the fixed and principled sign, or are we going to be the principled but dynamic sign? That's kind of the thing for Aquarius. Now, if your sun is in Aquarius, there's going to be a point in time in the next couple of years when you have a year where Saturn is on your sun, as we say. Saturn will be transiting your sun. When that happens, there is a bit of heaviness. There is a sense that you have to kind of pare things back. It's by no means an ego-boosting kind of energy. On the other hand, it really helps you to get serious about who you are and what you're doing. And, you know, in fact, are you living up to your own ideals? Are you who you are meant to be? It's a big question. For those who have Saturn rising, for those who have Aquarius rising, Saturn's passage will at some point in time be very empowering. Before Saturn gets to your actual ascendant degree, and that could be 2023, it could be 2020, but before it gets to the actual ascendant degree, you're liable to feel, it's not like nothing happens with Saturn in the 12th house behind the ascendant. It's not like nothing happens, but no matter what's happening, you always kind of feel like you're a little bit on hold until it goes over the ascendant. And when it does, very empowered, really feeling like you want to make decisions, really feeling like you are ready to make your life what you want it to be. So Saturn in Aquarius, for those who have Aquarius rising, at some point in time, it's going to be extremely self-empowering. Before that, it's not bad. It's really not bad. Saturn on the ascendant is not a bad transit. Before it happens, you just sort of feel like you're sort of hanging out waiting for something. And then afterwards, you're ready to do things. Of course, one little caveat would be, don't push things too far. That sort of cool energy of Saturn can be a little bit of a thing, and it's easy to sort of burn bridges and, you know, sort of chuck away the past and so on. It would be better to be a little bit softer on that. But generally speaking, very self-empowering. At the end of the day, Aquarius is going to be fine, whether it's your sun or your ascendant. It's going to be fine. You know, you're going to go through a bit of, Aquarius suns are going to go through a bit of a thing, but they'll come out of it and they'll be strong. Capricorn, well, you've got Saturn out of the house, but Saturn's the landlord. You're shooing the landlord out of the house, and so and where are you putting him? You're putting him in your house of finances. That could be certainly the financial markets are not at the beginning of Saturn in Aquarius. The financial markets are not doing so good, and the economy has essentially ground to a halt. The global, the worldwide sense of things is ground to a halt. You're going to have to, Capricorns are going to have to be serious about money, serious about their finances, their resources, using resources, and perhaps finding new and creative ways to get some resources. You probably will make a lot of 2021. That is, there's a lot of potential in the year 2021 for you. If we back up one more sign to Sagittarius, now we have Saturn in the third house. And this is, this is a relatively benign placement of it. It has a lot to do with siblings and neighbors and things like that. It would have a lot to do with neighborhood. It would have a lot to do with your involvement in the community. And as we sort of have this sort of pull between, living online or living in our community, I kind of feel that if you're a Sag or Sag rising, this pulls you more towards the community itself, pulls you more local. Think global, act local would be your slogan for the next few years. If Saturn was the only planet in the sky anyway. If you're a Scorpio, this has a lot to do with home, real estate. It has a lot to do with property values and things like that. It has a lot to do with family. And again, these are just things that you need to take seriously, make decisions on. Be active where Saturn is. For every sign, you want to be active where Saturn is. You probably don't want to be active where Saturn is. You should be active where Saturn is. So Scorpio, Scorpio rising, family, real estate, property, things like that. Pay attention. Pay a lot of attention. Libra, it's kind of a creative energy. It's kind of it brings you to your creative side. It could perhaps be an issue for kids. You could have to start dealing with kids and kid issues a lot if you have youngins in the house. But in general, it is a creative time. It's a time when you may feel that you're restricted in doing the things that you really love to do. Again, right now, everybody feels that way. But you might really feel like you're a little restricted in terms of what you'd like to do, what feels good, what gives you joy. But the flip side of that is then you come back and say, okay, well, I'm really going to dedicate myself to those things that I really, really care about. It's almost sort of like, you can't leave the house and so on. As Saturn moves into Aquarius, you can't leave the house. You got to be at home. You're really restricted. You think about the things that you can't do. And then when you get the opportunity, you say, okay, well, I'm going to do what I really want to do. I'm going to do the things that give me joy. And things that don't really give me joy, I'm not going to do them. I'm not going to, I don't, it's not that much fun to do that anymore. I'm going to go off and do the things that I want to do. That's your Libra message of Saturn and Aquarius. If we back up one more and talk about Virgo and Virgo rising, Saturn and Aquarius is very much a work-oriented kind of energy. It's certainly time to take care of your health. It goes for everybody. We've all got a little Virgo in us now. But it's very much a time to take care of health. It's very much a time to look at your work routine, the things that you're doing on a daily basis, and how that kind of energizes you or drags you down. The whole key to it is, if it makes you feel good body and soul, and it really is enriching, even if it's hard, if it's enriching, you go ahead with it. And if it's draining, you got to cut it out. Saturn is good for cutting things out. And if we go back to Leo, now Leo, this has a lot to do with relationship energy, right? So this is the 7th house from Leo and has a lot to do with relationship. And this could feel, particularly for Leo rising, this is a real decision kind of period for relationship. You are in or you're out. It's going to happen. It's not going to happen. What you really want, what's realistic, what's realistic. Saturn is not going to open up a ton of new possibilities. Jupiter might open up possibilities when he goes to Aquarius, but we'll talk about that next year. But even if Jupiter opens up possibilities for you in terms of relationship, Saturn is going to say, well, are you going to work at them? And out of all of these possibilities, which one are you going to invest in? Or is investing in one relationship really what you want? These are the questions for Leo. Again, there's no one answer to this. These are the questions that you have to deal with. Cancer, the sign of Cancer. It's an 8th house issue for the sign of Cancer, and it's an awkward kind of energy to work with. Literally, it has to do with things like debt and finances and so on. It's a bad time for Cancers to be, trying to get away with something when it comes to the tax man or insurance companies, et cetera, et cetera. All of those big monstery kinds of things that, you're not happy to deal with, even to an extent, bureaucracies like the Motor Vehicle Bureau. You don't want to try to get away with a lot. You got to kind of keep your ducks in order with this stuff. You want to be ready to answer for yourself with those kinds of issues. It's also the house of partners, finances, so that could have something to do, if you're in business, could have something to do with your partner. And of course, the 8th house is also a very psychological house. It's also sort of like your own past, your own personal, we're not really necessarily going back to past lives or anything like that, but your own personal stuff. You have to deal with your own personal stuff. I think, if you had a really bad 3rd grade or whatever it was, you have to deal with those kinds of issues. That's the Cancerian challenge. Gemini. Gemini is feeling this as a 9th house energy. It is, what is your philosophy as well as your ideals? Where are you really going to put your efforts to get to the higher ground? It's a great time for Geminis. For example, it would be a great time for Geminis to begin a meditation practice or something along those lines. You would probably not just want to explore different philosophies and ideas. You actually have to kind of do a little bit of living them. Again, Saturn and Jupiter will give you a palette to choose from, and you have to invest yourself in one of them. If you're a Taurus, well, Taurus, this is a career kind of energy for you, and there's likely to be a lot of work and a lot of responsibility, particularly for Taurus rising. For Taurus rising, lots of responsibilities in terms of career, lots of decisions. Again, where are you going to invest yourself in the area of career? And you always have to think, this is Aquarius. So for all of these things, we have to think, well, where is the ideal? Not just what makes me money, not just what I can do, but where's the ideal? What should I be doing? It's not just career. The 10th house isn't just career. It's your point of destiny. Well, what is your point of it? What's your reputation? What do you want to be remembered for, Taurus? Not just eating cookies on the couch. So what if you're remembered for that? Aries, this is an 11th house kind of energy for you. It is good for things like networking, social networking, blogging, connecting with folks, putting lots of stuff out there, and then finding the connections that really work and really are valuable for you, and then going ahead and developing them. Again, the theme for everyone is the possibilities are there. Which ones are you going to invest in? Jupiter's going to help. Uranus is going to help. But once the possibilities are there, which one are you going to invest in? So that's a big question for Aries. And then finally, there's Pisces. And this is a 12th house energy for Pisces. And Pisces usually should theoretically be good with 12th house energy. It's also a good time to begin a spiritual practice or to reinvest in your spiritual practice, to meditate, to take time to go on retreat, you know, some of that Saturnian ability to shut things down and shut things out. Well, maybe Pisces, and particularly Pisces rising, will find great benefit in having a bit of space, a bit of distance, a bit of quiet. You know, maybe the Saturn in Aquarius for Pisces really does emphasize the kind of going offline. That might be kind of the strategy for Saturn in Aquarius if you're a Pisces. Well, that is a sort of quick and dirty look at what's up for each sign with Saturn in Aquarius. Again, the main theme has to be you're looking at all the potentials, and there will be potentials there. Right now, in early 2020, it doesn't necessarily feel that way. Once we get to the end of the year and get into 2021, it will feel that way. But you have to look at the potentials, pick what really seems to be the thing for you, and invest yourself in it and work at it. All right. We'll talk again soon on something else.